streaming it as you or Grow?
Under Grow.
Okay, I'm just checking to see if I can see it.
Yeah, it's preparing it right now. And I'm starting to record as well, just so you all know. Right, and it looks like we are almost live. One sec. Remind me, what did we title this? Distance learning.
All right, it says that it's now streaming on Facebook.
All right, wonderful. So we could go ahead and get started then.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us talk, basically. So we'll be covering distance learning in the time of COVID, and we have two very special guests who will be talking about effective practices and tools for high school educators, as well as helping students navigate post-secondary success, which we all know right now is very challenging. And we'll talk about actionable steps that educators can take and create the best learning environment for students while they're learning from home or have a hybrid situation. And we know that it's very time consuming right now. It's really hard to replicate that traditional in-person learning experience while keeping the students engaged. So we have Nicole Silver with us today. She's the founder and executive director of growmyfuture.org, and she'll be sharing those best practices on setting up the virtual learning environment and adapting your existing curriculum, using already established curriculum, or designing a brand new one from the ground up. She's also going to address how to best support those students navigating their career and self-identity and post-secondary success in the time of COVID. We also have with us Jaden, who is a student, a high school student, and I'll let her talk about herself for a couple minutes. Thanks for joining us, Jaden.
Hi, my name is Jaden. I go to Oakland School for the Arts. I'm a sophomore, rising sophomore. And I do a lot of activism in my community, and I root for social justice change and for climate change because intersectionality in our communities is very important. And I'm really excited to be here and help in any way I can. That's kind of it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Nicole, you want to give us a brief intro in terms of yourself and Grow My Future?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm the founder and executive director of growmyfuture.org, which is a curriculum that is based on helping high school students figure out who they are and what they want to do after high school. So we developed a curriculum that high school students can deliver within their classrooms. It's plug and play, super, super easy. And we developed it, it's all digital. So we've been looking at this whole digital thing even before COVID. It is delivered by the teacher to their students, but it's been transformed now to be delivered digitally as well. So I've got a good grasp on how to develop it. And I actually, before developing the platform for educators, I did a lot of heavy studying in terms of how to make it most engaging and the best opportunity and experience for teachers and as well as students too, by doing things like interviewing executives over at Udemy and like some of these bigger platforms that really understand how to create engagement when it comes to online learning and MOOCs and stuff like that. So I am the founder of Grow. I also wrote a guidebook for I guess college students and adults to help them figure out what they want to be doing if they're in the right career and life alignment as well.
Yeah, awesome. And that's called The Key to Full Potential. I'll give you a little one there. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if you in the audience have any questions, feel free to post that in the chat, either in Zoom or the Facebook Live. So Nicole, given that educators have been thrust into this distance learning, virtual learning, hybrid learning environment, what has worked and what hasn't worked with adapting curriculum in your experience?
Yeah, it is a very big adjustment to go from in-class teaching to online teaching. And one of the biggest things is constant engagement. If it is lecture-based, that becomes an issue for a lot of students. I watch my daughter, who is also 15, and her learning experience online. And I know a lot of teachers, there's a lot, there is some engagement, but I think having it be really much more heavily directed towards specific engagement, like having outcomes from engagement and really planning out like how can we have this be more experiential or introspective for students, I think is a really big important piece. And we recently did another webinar, and one of the woman that was on the webinar with us, one of the things that she mentioned that is something that Grow's been doing for a while too is really building from the user's experience. So asking your students, like, how can I make this class better for you? What are some ways that we can build this, and have them be co-creators in the experience of building that online engagement for distance learning, I think is a really big piece.
Yeah, that's a great segue to my next question for Jaden. So Jaden, tell us about your experience from, last spring and what you think can be improved, and what were some of the biggest challenges for you with distance learning with both teachers, other students, and even maybe at home?
I know personally a big thing for me was trying to keep myself engaged, because when you are at home and you have the option to wake up 2 minutes before class and just roll over and log in on the Zoom app on your phone, it's really hard to constantly stay engaged and keep your mind ready and open to wanting to learn new subjects and being able to grasp the idea of new subjects. I know a lot of friends of mine don't really like their home environment, and school was a really easy way to release a lot of the stress and be around their friends, just like in the breaks that we have, or just like sitting next to your friends in class. So I know it's just being at home, which might seem like teachers are like, oh, you have more time, this is less stressful for you, blah, 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 because you're just sitting at home, which isn't the case for a lot of people. Just being at home and sitting at home all day can be extremely stressful. So taking that sympathy and taking the just understanding the narrative that not all kids are having the best time, or that it is easier for them to understand, with the advantage of being able to be at home and wake up a little later. It doesn't change the fact that it's still really hard to grasp new concepts online. Another thing was it was really hard to keep in contact with teachers. A lot of teachers were really bad at responding to emails. And I know for my school in particular, the deadlines were very strict. Like, they wanted everything to be done by the end of the week for all of your classes. So when you're trying to create a schedule to figure out how you're going to just find the energy to get everything done through the whole day, having limited access and inability to communicate constantly with teachers was very difficult in trying to finish the work by the end of the week, just for me personally.
Okay. Now, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you have done differently, or what can we do as an educational system to best support you?
Adding on to what Miss Nicole said, I recommend just genuinely asking your class what they need individually, because I know a lot of kids are going to need different things. I can't speak for everybody in my class. I know me personally, I just would have wanted, them to have asked me or just ask the class in the beginning what would have made social distance learning easier. I would have said just more, I probably would have said just make sure to keep more in contact with us and try and be more engaging when giving us lectures and when giving us notes, and probably like slightly longer deadlines and keeping more in contact with other teachers so that work isn't overlapping in a really uncomfortable way, because it's not like classwork, homework, so it's less of a burden. It's all homework. You're just sitting there all day doing the same thing. So just talking with teachers and talking with your class and making sure that students are getting what they need from you and from your class at the time.
Okay. So do you think it would be like really helpful to have maybe a Facebook chat group for just your class? Or I don't know how your classroom was arranged. I know my niece did everything on Facebook. They had Facebook Live for teaching, and then they had some Google Classroom stuff. But is that what you would prefer? Would you prefer being able to text them? How would you like to stay in contact?
Um,
I have another.
I know with my school, everything was done through Google Classroom. So just making sure to be consistent when posting on Google Classroom or whatever platform that you're using, making sure that the assignments are just like there and ready, just so everything runs smoother for everybody, which also makes turning in assignments and just grasping the concepts easier. Communication wise, I mean, whatever platform you were using, our class, I know my school was using either Zoom or Google Meet, I believe. Yeah. So just being like very intentional with where you place information and how, and like being very clear on how you describe the information that you're trying to relay onto your students is going to be very essential for kids to grasp, especially like completely new subjects this year. Just constant access to that information and access to you.
I have a couple suggestions there too. One is maybe having like study group periods, in where like a group of students can come together and you can offer like maybe the Zoom platform or some place where they can all gather and have a study period and support each other through all of this. And also offering, I've been having my daughter go on to Khan Academy whenever she doesn't understand a concept, which can also, you can look at the possibility of doing a flipped classroom model as well, where they actually learn through Khan Academy. Like you assign like, okay, for this day, watch these lectures, and then we'll come together as a class and we'll discuss and we'll go through the homework together. I think that could be really helpful. I know for a lot of the students, it's difficult having a lot of homework assigned to them. I know what I saw happen was that there was maybe 40 minutes of class and then twice the amount of homework, which didn't work. It should be, yeah, it should be really the opposite, is that there should be less homework right now. I think it's really important to realize that students are under such stress, and a piece that we need to take into consideration is that for a lot of students, going to school was an outlet for them. It was a way for them to be with one another. It was a way, some students, we don't know what the home situation is like, and it's really important to take that into consideration, that there might be some kids that might be in abusive homes that we're not certain of. And I think just during the time of COVID and everything that's happening in this world, I mean, everything's being turned upside down in its head and on its head, and all of us are feeling a level of stress and anxiety regardless of any other factors that are layered on top of that. So taking into consideration the mental health of students too, and of ourselves as educators as well, of what you're going through, and having that patience with yourself, and also taking that into consideration when putting curriculum together, and that students might need, it might take a little more effort to check in with them individually, and to really not assume what their situation is or how they're doing, or any of that, but really take into consideration that this is a hard time for everybody right now. And the less work that they have to do alone on their own, I personally think is probably better for them, for their mental health, and also for their learning. The more that you can do together in class, the more that you can make engaging opportunities. And actually, I'd be interested to hear from you about this, Jaden, as well, in terms of the interaction piece, because I know on one side it can be sometimes awkward for teenagers to interact if it's like interacting with people that they don't know. But then on the other hand, in the state of where everybody is isolated, that this is their opportunity to actually have social contact and interact. What are your thoughts, Jaden, on those kind of two different sides of like, okay, it might be awkward and it's also a chance to socialize?
It can be uncomfortable, especially like being one-on-one with teachers, especially if you didn't have that relationship with any of your teachers before, especially because we're moving a grade up. Learning, like getting into contact with completely new teachers, it's really important to just try and set that aside as much as you can, because what's the overarching most important thing is relaying the information regardless of the uncomfortableness, because what's going to be more uncomfortable is when you're sitting there last minute trying to understand the concept before you have a test, or before this assignment needs to be turned in, because that's when it really comes into play. So just trying to talk to them before about what they need, what boundaries, when communicating is going to be different for everyone. Like some people are going to want more communication with you, and some are just going to like, this is what I need, and we don't really need to talk after that. Everybody's going to want different levels of communication. So once again, it's mostly just keeping any communication with each of your students and asking what they need individually, because everybody is different in what they need for their learning environments. So just communication overall.
So maybe doing a pre-survey with your students, to create a survey ahead of time and asking students what their needs are, how they best learn, any suggestions that they might have might be a good way, because I think the more that you can engage your students too, the more ownership that they'll have, and the more engaged that they'll be as well.
Yeah, I think that maybe at the end we can share some of your pre and post assessments as well that you've done, in terms of making sure that the students are staying engaged and learning and understanding the material, which is really important. So, you both touched on very important factors in um, learning in the home, other factors like mental health and domestic violence, and et cetera. And um, I'm curious now, what would you say, both of you? We'll start with maybe Jaden. How can we best support you with navigating like what's beyond high school, right? So by the time you're a sophomore, people are starting to get ready for college, and everything's just kind of up in the air with COVID right now. We need to make sure that our students aren't going to fall behind and not be able to get into the schools that they need to. So um, tell me what your thoughts are, and then Nicole, maybe you can jump in after.
Sure, happy to.
And getting people ready to go to college,
or
I feel
other
like
pathways. It doesn't necessarily, I just want to add, like, in terms of after you graduate from high school,
What's next,
and how can we better support you, or how are you feeling about that? I know you're just now going into 10th grade, so you're probably just now starting to think about this a little bit. I mean, you guys, this generation's amazing, where you guys have probably thought about all this stuff for a while, but are there any things that we can better support you with, or ways in which you have questions, or you're curious, or you're nervous about, in terms of what it's going to be looking like after, like during the next couple of years, getting prepared to enter into the real world?
Personally, my plan for like after high school has been thought out and planned since I was like, I don't even remember. I know what I want to do, but keeping those resources out to kids and just offering your support and letting them know that you're there for them is going to be super important. I know personally what after high school is a super big motivator for getting my things turned in, because I'm like, okay, yeah, this sucks right now. I do not want to do any of this work. However, if I get these grades, then I can go on to do blah, 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 blah. So using that as a motivator will definitely get your class more engaged, because I know a lot of people really dislike high school. It's not the most fun time for everybody. So trying to, give out resources. And I've seen a few tests actually online that basically is like a Q&A on your interests and what you enjoy emotionally and just the type of person you are. And they give out a whole bunch of resources on different professions that you might be interested in. I recently took one of those and it gave me the profession that I was already looking into. So maybe looking at some of those and linking those onto your Google Classroom or whatever platform that you're using to give your kids information, and using that to keep them engaged and keep them excited on, what's next and this is what's going on, and just using it as we want to educate you to push you forward, to give you the structures and the basis that you need to move forward in life, and to get, just overall just give you the skill sets to move forward so you can have the life that you want, whatever job or college track that you're interested in, and just supporting them and getting those grades and keeping them engaged in that way is super helpful for me. Once again, don't want to speak for everybody, but yeah, keeping them engaged with what's moving on and just looking into the future in general tends to be really helpful with kids right now.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I don't know, Jaden. I don't know how much you know about the organization that I founded, but that's like exactly what we do. So maybe, and I know that there's a teacher over at OSA, a couple of them actually, that really want our curriculum to embed it in. But basically, I think Jaden's exactly right. Like regardless of COVID or not COVID, like if students understand who they are and what they're aligned with and what they want to do, then they stay motivated to get through high school. So with our curriculum, we help students identify who are they, what is the best career match, and then how do you actually succeed. So they end up with a roadmap from where they are to where they want to go, so they aren't going to miss any steps, and that roadmap can actually transfer to other teachers so that those kids can be tracked. But having that motivation and having that alignment with who are you and what you want to be doing and what does that look like post high school, and for them to decide it for themselves, not somebody else deciding it for them or suggesting it for them, but for it to be self-motivated is really important. And with that in mind too, we've seen like the results with students outside of COVID. They've gone from D's and F's to A's and B's, or one student was actually on probation. He took his certification to the courthouse and he was like, I'm not drifting anymore. We've seen some really good results in terms of engagement with students. And I mean, I think right now more than ever, it's really important to support our students in the dreams that they have for themselves. I think that not only is it helpful because we want them to be engaged, there's no bigger question that you can ask of who am I and what do I want to do, but I think also giving them that hope and inspiration right now is so incredibly important, because it's a hard time. It's a hard time for students, especially in high school, especially students that are missing their prom or are, not getting the typical high school experience. To have a motivation that keeps them engaged, I think is not just good for their future, but also for their mental health as well. One more thing that I wanted to say outside of this question, we can come back to this question, but I forgot to mention this when it comes to distance learning. One of the things that I learned from Udemy is that the more that you can ask questions and engage students, the better. So like taking a pause, so not lecturing for long periods of time, but having there be something and then pausing and checking in with them, maybe having all of them like type into the chat box what their answer is, but to have them be continuously engaged is a really, really important piece. So
also, if they're using Zoom as the platform, being able to utilize the breakout groups and having the students, chat amongst themselves if you ask questions or have a certain challenge for them, or even do some like live group projects. Speaking of which, I know, Nicole, in the past you've talked about some best practices for virtual learning and project-based learning. Can you share with our listeners or audience today some of those best practices?
Absolutely. Yeah. So project-based learning is a great way to be going about and doing this, and for students to be learning right now. Instead of it being like a fill in this worksheet, but to have it be a project that they're building and working towards. And again, that can be a conversation also with students in terms of what their strengths are and how they want to apply that, maybe giving them options in terms of how to build out a project. Interactive and introspection, like that's how Grow has developed all of our curriculum, which also makes it easier for you, the interactive or introspective piece, if you offer that to students, because it takes you out of having to be a teacher and you become more of a facilitator of the experience for students, which I think is good for you and good for them as well. So interaction could be such as, like Lucy was suggesting, breakout rooms and having activities based in breakout rooms, or it could be introspection where they do some self-reflection writing, or they could even, it doesn't even have to be our typical, ways in which we think of teaching. It could be, okay, we're studying, I know last year, Jaden and Naya, you were studying Romeo and Juliet. Maybe it's like, do some sort of artwork or do some sort of project that symbolizes XYZ. Like maybe it's about thinking outside of the box and allowing kids to utilize their strengths and their creativity as well. And I think the more power that you can give to your students and the more range in ways in which they can engage, the better. But again, going back to best practices, really checking in with them frequently, not lecturing for long periods of time, having there be more interaction, having that it be something in which is engaging for them is key.
Yeah, I've also heard of some teachers who are applying what they're teaching to real life right now. So like we're going through a pandemic, maybe there's a math problem that relates to the certain number of statistics of, cases and things like that. Like I think making an abstract idea concept, like real life for them makes a lot more sense as well.
Yeah. And I think also this is an opportunity. So right now, the world itself is an opportunity. I feel like there is this sense of kind of everything is being kind of torn down in a sense, right? And through this destruction comes creation, in which we get to create a world more so of what it is that we want to be living in, that is more aligned and congruent for everybody. I mean, as teachers and educators, we all know a lot of the things we've been teaching is really outdated. That, of course, we put our spin on things, but that now we have an opportunity to reinvent things because of all this crazy chaos. So I just wanted to plant that seed, is how can you now recreate in your classroom, in your schools, an environment and learning that can be better for students and more of this day and age, and more tools that they can actually utilize, because we are missing a lot of essential things, and it is that opportunity to reinvent ourselves. You have any thoughts on that, Jaden?
Through quarantine, I mean, while you're sitting at home, there's a lot of access to a whole bunch of information, and it gives a lot of time for self-reflection, which I feel like going back to motivating kids on what they want to do post high school could be really cool and important. Just like not really giving the assignments outside of school, but maybe just giving just like cool things to look at and cool things to do that'll like keep them engaged on a more personal level to build healthy relationships with your students, which could also make the conversations in between when they do need to ask for more resources easier to communicate with. Also, I know you were talking about like having Naya look at Khan Academy videos, which has also been like super helpful. I know my biology teacher was really good at like giving a whole bunch of links to draw information from. Like she was like, okay, if you don't understand it through this, you can watch this or do this, and just giving a whole bunch of different new constructive ways of learning. One of my favorite assignments when we were doing the Romeo and Juliet thing was because we had an opportunity to create a physical art piece, which was one of my favorite things about being in school was those projects, because those are what genuinely get me really engaged. So being able to do something that isn't digital and, just send a picture and turn it in, it's fun, it's educational, and it's just like a way to keep everybody engaged and doing, like, it just gives you something to do while keeping your classroom engaged. So not just doing everything online, but giving other resources to like physically move or to keep or to be creatively engaged in whatever way you can incorporate that in your class.
And maybe even group projects too, where students can connect outside of the classroom, where they can have that engagement to kind of break up that social distancing piece.
That was so much fun to do. For my final project in Spanish, I got to do like a slideshow type fashion thing with my friend Eliana. So it was just like, we didn't get to see each other in person, but just like, being able to be on FaceTime and do a project and just, laughing and creating a project together, and then got an A on it, but just like getting just having those fun moments was, it kept me engaged. It made me want to do the project. It just motivated me to like get up and be like, oh, I get to talk to Eliana today and like do this thing that I was looking forward to do. So just creative ways to like keep your classroom engaged, not just with you, but with each other, in group projects that can be done, in breakout rooms, or assigning assignments that can be done with kids over FaceTime, or if kids who are social bubbling together, because I know that's happening a lot. Like there are a lot of kids at my school who have their own little social bubble groups. So giving kids the opportunity to like go out and do that with them, just in like, just giving them that opportunity is super helpful and super fun as well.
So Jaden, I can clearly see that you are very self-motivated and like on your path. I'm curious, you can anonymously share, but do you have friends that are really struggling, and like not only are they struggling, they're also afraid to ask for help? And what advice do you give them, and how do you help them get what they need out of school?
Personally, I love motivating my friends. I know a lot of people who were not doing so well at the end of this year. They just were tired of it. They lost all motivation. They're like, I'm done. Like, what is the point? I'm just sitting at home all day. I'm just like not really wanting to do anything at all, which makes sense. I had those moments, and there were times where I didn't really do anything at all, and it sucked to make it all up. However, just telling them, just honestly just motivating, what I did was motivate them about the future, and trying to, at the time, just being like, man, you do not want to do summer school. You do not want to be at home all day and then have to be in summer school. And I know a lot of people who had to do that, and they're like, man, this sucks. And I was like, yeah, I know. So just I don't know what I would say other than just trying to tell them that you're here for them, to support them in whatever way you can. I know a lot of people are just reaching out to their friends individually who are doing a lot of the self-motivation, making sure that they can, like, that people still have access to their close friend circle, and making sure that they take self-care days and are still being engaged with other people. Just constant engagement with people in your community is super helpful with kids. Like, if you see that your kid is struggling and that they just don't want to move out of the house or anything like that, and kind of go into what can look like a depressive episode, trying to help them create a social bubbling group where they can get out of the house and engage with other people their age, so where it doesn't just feel like they're in the house all day long doing work, but giving them that time to be able to leave the house and see other people and do other things, which I know is taken away from a lot of kids who like went to group spaces to do activities. But making sure that kids have access to the people around them and trying to create those groups for your kids can help them feel less alone and sheltered off, which is really easy to do when the whole point of COVID is to, stay 6 feet away from everybody and just stay in the house. So giving kids the access and the opportunity to see the people that they love willingly, not just through a screen, is also going to keep kids motivated and everybody just wants to get through this. Everybody just wants to be done with it. So just giving them the opportunity to do that is also very helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful. And I think that that's probably, that will land in the discretion of parents and how they want to design that. But I think that you're speaking to something that's so important, which is the mental health of students, and always, I think that is the bottom baseline in which educators this year have to operate, knowing that emotionally that their students are going through a lot. So to put even more on them is going to be very, very difficult. And just to keep that in mind when doing things. How can you create your curriculum to be more uplifting, more engaging, not having them take home a bunch of different homework, and like Jaden is saying, and what I've dedicated my life to is helping students figure out what their path is, because if they have that motivation, and if you can create projects, if you understand what your students want to be doing after post high school, you can also create projects that can help support them go into whatever career it is that they want to be doing. So if they understand what they want to be doing, let's say that one of the projects, let's just go back to the Romeo and Juliet thing, since we've used that as a basis in this conversation, that let's say that Romeo and Juliet is what they want to be doing, let's say, or that you're doing in your lesson plan as an English teacher. Well, if a kid wants to be a visual artist, then maybe they create some sort of visual art, or if they want to be in acting, they have to create some sort of play, or if they want to be a mechanic and engineer, and let's say that they want to design cars, that they have to design a specific car that was made just for Romeo and Juliet. Like, if tailoring it to what their hopes and goals and aspirations are for the future could be something really cool, because not only do they get to engage in something they're passionate about, but then after high school, when they're applying to college, or when they're applying to jobs, they can say, hey, in high school, I built this really super cool, two-seated car that also, had the ability to hover or to do X, Y, Z, and here's a sketch of it, right? Just to have them have that as part of their portfolio and something that they're building, that it not only is it helpful for students in terms of of them understanding what they want to be doing, but them building and having actual tangible things that they can bring into the world as they enter. I'm saying enter the world, everybody's already in the world, entering the workforce or work beyond high school. Because I think part of the why kids are in high school and why kids are in school is for us to give them flight and to give them wings into the world beyond high school, where they're going to stand on their own. I think that one of the big purposes of high school is to give them the legs and to give them the wings to do what it is that they are supposed to be doing afterwards.
Well, thank you. I'm going to wrap up with one last question so we can turn it over to the audience for Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot has been talked about today. If there was just one piece of actionable advice you'd offer to our audience, what would that be?
Listen to your students. Really, really listen to them. I think that that is the most important thing.
I would say trying to have compassion with yourself and compassion with your students for what everybody's going through, and just practicing patience in your classrooms is going to make everything run more smoothly. If everybody's just patient and compassionate with each other and trying to figure this out together.
Wise beyond your years. Awesome. So would love to take any questions if you have any. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask, or you can type in a question in the chat.
And we'll check Facebook too, to see if anybody on Facebook, since we are live on Facebook, to see if anybody also has questions there too. And while we're waiting, if you want to think about any questions that you might have, I also really want to emphasize, as for teachers, that you take the time and patience for self-care for yourself too, and understanding. I know how much you are all going through in this whirlwind of trying to figure out how to teach online, and making sure that you take care of yourself and nurture yourself is important as well. So really, like on Sunday, take Sunday off if you need to take Sunday off. Like build in time for yourself so that you can come back to the classroom refreshed, so that you don't get overwhelmed as well. Because you're such an important piece to all of this, and the work that you do is incredibly important. And I thank all of you for showing up to this and engaging in this conversation, because it's important and it shows that you care. And so I'm very grateful for the work that you all do, and just wanted to put that out there. Take care of yourselves as well. Do we have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, so Morgan, you had typed in integrated thematic-based design, think like an elementary teacher. I would love to hear more about that, and I'm sure other people on the call would too.
Sure, yeah. My name is Morgan. I'm a principal of a brand new school, not a charter, public school, grades 3 through 12. That is a blended of online and brick and mortar. Flexible scheduling, kids come and go all day long when they need the help. No required seat time. Curriculum's online, but teachers are in the building and online at the same time to help kids whenever they need the help. Before that, it was 30 years as an elementary teacher, where you could really, when I say think like an elementary teacher, it's, how can you wrap the important concepts around a central theme and create a 4 or 5 week long unit project that has tremendous buy-in. But as you work through the grades and teachers become more content minded versus concept minded, trying to create those opportunities for especially, the high school teachers to think in that integrated design can be difficult. There's a lot of content to cover. Math really wants to concentrate on math. But this is a grand opportunity for teachers to work in groups, social studies with science, with language arts, to get together. And Jaden, I like what you had to say, that when you think about the homework load, I think teachers can often forget that, they've got their homework for you to do, but so does that teacher and that teacher and that teacher. So when you can concentrate on that thematic type of design, it's better buy-in and engagement, It feels more real world for the student. It lessens that load, and it helps teachers to concentrate on concepts and not just content, because I think we can get so concentrated on the content. You've got to think beyond that and think, what's the point here? Is it the content or is it the concepts? Is it the thinking or is it a product? So that's kind of what I meant by that.
That's awesome. 100% agreed.
I remember too, when my daughter was in elementary school, the teachers did collaborate together, and they would work on certain themes throughout the year. And so English might be reading something about what history is teaching, which, you know, there's some sort of math equation that ties into all of that. So tying them all together is kind of a cool way to go about doing that too. Jaden, it looks like you've got a question here. What was the easiest aspect of tech to deal with, and what was the most difficult aspect of the tech to deal with?
The easiest aspect of tech to deal with was most likely the access to be able to just roll out and grab my phone and be in class. I was getting full hours of sleep. It was great. I was very excited about that as soon as I saw my hours, and we have they pushed back school to where we had an extra hour. So I was waking up at 8:55 every day. I was very excited about that. But the most difficult aspect of tech was, like, you know, Wi-Fi complications sometimes. And a lot of teachers, because they are super stressed out right now. I know a lot of my teachers were like, I know all of the teachers are like constantly grading and just like also just sitting at home grading all day and then trying to create a lesson plan for the next day and trying to keep everybody engaged at the same time can be super stressful for them. But the stress does ultimately also have an effect on the students. So their attitudes towards that was really difficult when everybody's just sitting at home. So I guess tech-wise, it was just like trying to just stay in contact with people is really easy not to do when you don't have to see them in person. It's really easy to just be like, I'm not checking my email this day. And it's the day you don't check your email is when it's like the day before a project and I need this answer. I need the answer to this problem. So that was the most most difficult thing to deal with, besides the fact that I'm just kind of staring at a screen all day, just constantly doing work online. It just is really wearing down on my mind and straining my eyes. So by the end of the day, I'm just really exhausted and do need those hours of sleep so I can just roll over the next day and just start it all over again.
There's a second part to that question. Did you miss the structure or did you enjoy the flexibility? Or maybe it's a combination.
As like in the structure of day-to-day school, like regular school, I really enjoyed the structure of, you know, I like having a routine somewhat. Also, my art is incorporated in my school, like I get to do my art. So which is way easier to do in person. I don't like how I have to be engaged online. It's harder to do, and it's harder to keep my mind ready and wanting to keep learning online. So I did appreciate the structure inside of school, but every school obviously has their own things structure-wise that they need to work out that could be better for students inside of school. But I did favor the aspect of period 1, period 2, period 3, lunch. It's more engaging. I get to see my friends. I get to see the people I love. I have access to all my teachers. It's really easy to just raise your hand in class. You don't have to worry about technical difficulties. So in school, it's always going to be more ideal for me. I do enjoy the flexibility of the classes though, because the short classes were obviously nice. I enjoyed the short classes, but that was out of a bit of laziness. because it is hard to stay engaged for that long as well online. So just like being able to just sit there and be like, okay, I only have like 5 more minutes of this class. It was really easy to do that, and it was really nice to be able to have class at 9 o'clock and not at 8-10 in the morning. So like waking up early as hell. Different aspects of both were nice to deal with. I mean, there's always going to be push and pull for every structure, especially when you're giving 2 completely different circumstances with their own advantages and disadvantages. So yeah, blend both on different levels.
What do you think about, as you were talking, I was wondering if there was like some sort of way to build into the middle of a class, like breaks where you could check in with the teacher or you can interact with students. What do you think about that idea, Jaden? Would you like that, or would you prefer to go through class and then at the end there's a check-in where the teacher hangs around and answers questions? But I guess I wonder if students would actually hang around if it was at the end versus like building something into the middle.
The class is over, kids are like, okay, that's a wrap, I'm out. Like
Right.
kids will, as soon as you give it, it's okay to leave, everybody is gone. So like that optional thing is not going to work. And I know a lot of kids, it is difficult for them to want to ask questions and to just keep themselves engaged. So, and also a lot of people are probably going to forget the questions that they had at the beginning of the class. And, you know, teachers just want to get through it. They're like, write down your questions, but not everybody's going to actually do that. So after like, especially when learning completely new concepts during the beginning of the year, just like whenever you're learning a new concept, trying to explain it and then getting feedback on, was this the correct way to explain this? Did you understand it? What are your questions? And then going over that, which might take a little bit more time, but it'll ensure that your students are understanding the concepts on a deeper level so that you're not getting a whole bunch of emails when it's homework time or the next day when everybody's like, I didn't understand anything that you were talking about and I don't remember anything at all, and nobody remembered their questions, and it's just like, so what, like every, you know, I like 15 minutes ish, once you're done explaining to a certain extent, like at a point where you feel like it's a breaking point to where kids would want to ask questions, that's a really good way to keep people mentally engaged, and also to make sure that kids are just understanding concepts, because you want them to understand what you're teaching them. You don't want to just sit there for 40 minutes and it's in one ear and out the other because they just want to get through to the end of the day. So, you know, whenever there's a breaking point, just asking people, hey, did you understand anything that I just said for the past 15 minutes is going to be helpful and engaging in that way. So yes, ultimately, yes.
I would even say break it down every 5 minutes in your lesson plan. Like break it down when you're this. So how we've designed Grow's curriculum is that there is absolutely a check-in point. If not, we try to make the majority of the class interactive or introspective, but especially I won't let the curriculum go more than 5 minutes without there being some sort of check-in or some sort of engagement, whatever that might be. But building out curriculum that let's say is math or English or history, making sure as you're building it to put in those breaking points. Like, don't just like kind of go with it and, you know, be ready at some point to stop. Actually put that into the curriculum. Make sure that you have points in which you're like, okay, I'm going to go through this concept and then I'm going to have them engage in this way, or I'm going to ask this question. So build that into your curriculum, because then students will be more engaged. Then they don't have to wait 15 minutes to answer a question that they may have had at the beginning. So building that in, I think, is a great way. And that's the way that Udemy suggested, and that best practices are, to continuously, like, you go through the small snippet of something, then you ask a question, like continuously engage with them. Don't have it be one-sided where you're lecturing. Have it be an interaction, kind of like a dance between you and the students, in where there is engagement.
I think that's it for questions. Yeah, one thing you were saying, I was thinking back to high school, which was many decades ago, but a math class I was taking, and the teacher would just write on the whiteboard the entire time. This is like in person, and I had so many questions I didn't understand. I epically failed that class, and I was an A student and everything else. So I think that, yeah, knowing how to slow down and ask if people are understanding what you're actually saying. So really important.
Really important.
Anywho, well.
And I wanted to let you all know too, with the nonprofit that with Grow, we do have a training coming up if you are interested in delivering it to your schools. It's all been amended so it can be delivered virtually. And our training is coming up this Monday on the 10th. We can potentially create different training opportunities outside of this specific date, but we do have that coming up if you are interested in having this be delivered to your school. And we've got 16 modules. With an additional, we're releasing an additional reflective days of another additional 16 that complement each core day. And it is all virtual, and it's all interactive and introspective. And I think it's so important for students now more than ever to be going through this part of, really what Jaden is saying. And also the curriculum itself is very engaging and great for students to be going through in a virtual setting. So we have everything designed. It's plug and play, super easy. We developed it with teachers in mind, knowing that you all are so busy. So you can literally come in and spend 30 minutes and deliver the class. Like, it doesn't take a lot of prep. We have everything ready and available for you. And it is the best of all worlds that are out there after a decade of looking at different curriculum and different things that help people figure out who they are and what they want to be doing. This ties in all the different pieces. And it's really cohesive and fluid. If you have any questions about that, you can email us at info@growmyfuture.org. Or visit our website at growmyfuture.org. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it is such an important piece. We were developed out of a labor of love because we know the importance of this for students. And I think now is the perfect time and so needed for our students. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, thank you for joining us, both speakers as well as audience. Again, if you have any further questions, please reach out to us, and I will be sending out some more information in terms of best practices and just a summary of various best practices and distance learning tools as well.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jaden. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for showing up.
And for your work.
Thank you, everybody. Jaden, you were wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, of course.